and welcome to Beyond the Venue podcast. I'm your host, MG, the venue specialist. I have with me today a longtime friend, both fellow Drexel grad and fellow Temple grad. This is Kristine Plourde Golden. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, MG.
Of course. So, Kristine, we started Drexel at the same time, but didn't necessarily know each other, but we reconnected when I first started at Temple to get my master's in tourism and hospitality management, the same program that you were in. And first semester, fall of 2009, I show up at an MPI. So is it Meeting Professionals International? Is that what it stands for?
Yeah,
MPI meeting. And you were a part of leading that meeting to try and get students to join MPI. And I had been familiar with this organization through a mutual friend, because I originally joined the graduate program thinking I wanted to go into event planning in the hospitality industry. And so it was recommended from another friend who was a full-time event planner, and I show up and I'm like, she looks super familiar. So I remember coming to speak with you at the end of the meeting and realized that we both went to Drexel. I think right out of the gate, you said, did you live in Myers freshman year? So for our listeners, it's one of the freshman dorms at Drexel University, which, fun fact, I kept hearing it was supposed to be built as a temporary dorm in the 70s. And it's still kicking in 2021. So we reconnected, realized we're in the program together. What was your kind of experience like up to that point? Because I know you and I had two very different graduate school experiences. So you had already been in the program a lot longer. So what was your story with Temple's program?
Yeah, so I actually started at Temple in the Master's in Tourism Hospitality program in 2006. So it was a year after I graduated from Drexel. I had been working at a corporate company, a financial institution, as a marketing officer. But everybody that I worked with had like an advanced degree. And I knew that if I wanted to go further in my career, I needed something else. At undergrad, I majored in communications. And I realized I really liked meeting management and I wanted to learn more about it. So I applied for Temple's program and somehow they let me in. Because I was working full time. I was a very, very part-time student. I only took one course a semester. So in 2006, by the time you got there in 2009, I was only halfway through. Very, very long road. The whole program changed in the time that I was there. But my school was actually subsidized too by my company. So
that's nice.
I had to make sure I made my grades and I had to report it in. So that funding really, really helped me in the long run, obviously. But yeah, in 2011, that's when we graduated. So it took me a whole 5 years at that point. But in that time, I had also joined Meeting Professionals International, the Philadelphia area chapter, because again, I realized that my professional network wasn't broad enough to help me get those extra skills that I didn't learn in undergrad. Those real world, how do you do it in corporate America? And I found MPI was a really great organization for me to meet people and to learn from other meeting managers and other people in the hospitality industry. So at that time, I think I was probably sitting on the student affairs committee because I was a student and we had just started to recruit for the student chapter at Temple. So Temple had its own MPI student chapter. And then since then, I've sat on the MPI board a couple of times and I'm going back to it in July. So I'm still very, very involved in that organization.
And when did you first join MPI?
Actually 2005, after I graduated.
Okay. So it has been a very integral part of your career, networking, learning, because I know they're constantly offering classes and workshops. When I joined up, I had the opposite experience where, so with grad school, I quit my full-time job to go to school full-time and ended up getting a part-time job at Temple. They refer to them as externships. And I worked with all the student organizations on campus through student activities, which I absolutely loved. and thinking I was going into event planning. Joining MPI was one of the best things I could have ever done for myself, because I started going to these events, and you're correct, everyone is so wonderful that I really enjoyed the connections I was making, the conversations that I was having. But it was this eye-opening experience where it seemed that anyone who had a long career in event planning kind of fell ass backwards into it, versus someone like me who had this like passion drive, like I love planning events, like I want to do this with my life. It seemed like those people fizzled out after about like a year or so and just had to figure out the what's next. And I didn't want that to happen to me. So I ended up completely switching gears and said, okay, I've got 3 semesters left of grad school. Like, let's see where the universe takes us. And so that next semester, spring semester of 2010, is when I had Dr. Roll's applied research course. And he said, okay, for this course, you're going to essentially write like your first thesis paper. And you need to pick a subject of something that you're interested in, because you're going to be stuck with this for an entire semester. And that's when I was like, well, I'm huge into craft beer, and that seems to be kind of a big deal. So that's how I got started in the craft beer world, and it really took off from there. So I always credit MPI to helping me kind of figure out that I needed, at that particular time in my life, I needed to go in a different direction. So thank you. Thank you for bringing me on board. And what's crazy is it would all kind of circle back, because then, I would jump to, well, now I'm getting ahead of myself, because during grad school, we'll come back to that, but during grad school, you got married. You and your boyfriend, Tom, now your husband, you had a very interesting wedding experience. And I would love you to tell our listeners about your wedding.
Yeah, well, I'll even bring it back a little further, because how we even got engaged was an interesting story. My husband, my boyfriend at the time, my husband's very frugal. And the one day I realized that he had bought a wedding ring because he found this really great online deal and ordered with himself a wedding band. And I said to my boyfriend, I said, oh, you bought a wedding band. Does this mean you're getting married to someone? So that kind of kicked off the whole process of buying an engagement ring and going to the jewelry store. And then it was a matter of, he's got to actually propose to me, which happened my birthday weekend in 2010. We were in California, actually, on vacation and following the Phillies. So really, really fun weekend, where he pretended that we were chasing a geocache. And for those that aren't familiar with geocaching, it's basically you get these online coordinates and some clues, and you have to go find this sort of buried treasure. And he made it into a game for me. He was feeding me all these clues, and I thought they were terrible clues because I couldn't find the package. I was getting frustrated. And then finally I picked up this box, and it was a jewelry box. And I said, oh, what? This isn't a geocache, because normally they come in like an ammo container or like a Tupperware. But this was a really shiny jewelry box. And he got down on one knee and asked me to marry him. And of course I said yes. So fast forward a few months, and when you get engaged, it's very exciting, and you get all of your family and friends involved. And I had been at a work event that my company at the time was sponsoring for the Mural Arts program. And the mayor at the time, Mayor Nutter, came to make a few remarks. And this was, I think, November of 2010. He said, okay, come back to the next Mural Arts event, the Love Letter Tour, where I'm going to marry a couple on the Market Frankfurt L. I was like, oh, that's an interesting concept. So I realized that the Mural Arts program was looking for couples to apply for this position, essentially, to be married on the L. And for those that are listening, the Market Frankfurt L is the subway that runs east to west, north to south, straight through Philadelphia city. And I told my fiance, Tom, at the time, I was like, oh, hey, I heard about this contest. And I distinctly remember he said to me, oh, let's apply. We'll never win. Well, January 5th, I got an email that said we were the lucky couple that was selected. So essentially, it was a program where they picked a lucky couple to be married on the Market Frankfurt L during the Love Letter Tour. So the Mural Arts program had a fundraising tour where they were offering for patrons to buy tickets and attend this curated show, which is basically getting on the mark at Frankfurt L with the artist that did the Love Letter series. And Steve Powers, his artist name is Espo. It's a series of 50 rooftop murals that you can see throughout West Philadelphia. And you can see them when you ride the L, because at that point it's elevated through West Philly. And so Mural Arts program essentially chartered a SEPTA train so that all their patrons could be on this specific train. So you weren't just in with the public if you bought a ticket. But the bonus was that you would be able to witness a couple getting married on the and by the mayor. So we were that lucky couple. And if you didn't hear me the first time, I said I found out January 5th, and this happened Valentine's Day weekend. So that's
wow.
5 weeks between January 5th and February 13th. And that was basically the time we had to tell all of our family and explain to them, yes, we're getting married on the L. And then 2, actually plan the rest of the wedding. So Mural Arts program took care of all of the heavy lifting with, obviously chartering the train and getting the mayor there and organizing the ceremony. And they also hosted a champagne and chocolate reception at SEPTA headquarters afterwards.
Oh, that's so nice.
That was really, really special, where the train basically made its way all the way to 69th Street. So between 15th Street and 40th Street is when the ceremony happened. On the moving train. So if you look back at the video of me, it's like holding on to the rail, like for dear life, because the train is speeding through.
Oh, it goes, of course.
And it didn't stop because it was a charter train. So, and it was between revenue trains, what they call them, for people that are actually, riding transportation and paying for it. So we had to make sure we stayed on schedule. So, all those logistics Mural Arts program took care of. And then my family, our bridal party, which I had a full bridal party, 4 bridesmaids, 4 groomsmen, and my now husband all got off the train at SEPTA headquarters with 300 other people that had bought tickets to the show just to witness us do our first dance, actually by the a cappella group. The a cappella group from Temple came down, and there was a freshman student, and I wish I remembered his name, but he learned our first dance song on acoustic guitar and played it for
us. What's the song?
So it's Calling You by Blue October. Because at the time I was, we're always apart and traveling and working. So it was really, really special to us. I apparently forgot to tell Tom that we were going to be dancing in front of 300 strangers. That was really exciting. We only had 5 weeks to figure this out. No dance lessons or anything, no real plan. We just kind of twirled around like it was a 6th grade dance off.
The arms straight out.
Yeah.
Did you have any sort of like dinner, reception, any of that? Was that all that night, or did you plan another party later down the road?
Well, both actually, because I'm originally from Massachusetts. And so not all of my family could come down to Philadelphia on such short notice.
Of course.
That night, it was a Sunday. We did end up booking the private space at Joyce and Lau restaurant. Both Tom and I have Chinese culture and Chinese heritage in our DNA. So that was really special to us to kind of bring all of our family there and have a modified Chinese banquet wedding reception. I say modified because not all of the dishes were very authentic. And I can get into that if we have time. Like I didn't serve the fish head with, the fish guts and everything. I served fish pieces instead. So it makes it a little more appetizing for people that aren't used to seeing head on your food, like the animal head.
Fair enough.
But it's also really important in Chinese culture and Asian culture to serve an animal whole.
Okay.
So like a little bit of balance that you have to take there. But, so in these 5 weeks time, we did kind of figure all of that out. We had our dinner at Joyce and Lau. So we walked from SEPTA headquarters at 12th and Market up to 11th and Race, and just walked in and had our reception in the basement of Joyce and Lau. But we only had 80 people, so we fit really, really well in there. It's not that
only 80 people. I love it.
8 tables. This was what it was the big ordeal in my family, because sometimes at Asian weddings you have 30 tables, and that's average. So I only had 8, which wasn't, that much to write home about, apparently. But still, it was all of our friends and family. We had the best DJ, the DJ, who came up from Bear, Delaware. I found him through a friend. And the poor guy had to lug all of his DJ equipment down into the basement.
Into a basement in Chinatown. Ooh, okay.
But yeah, it was a really magical day. And
Did you get a chance to do your tea ceremony?
I didn't. No, we didn't have time, actually. And at the time, I didn't really have anybody to help me with those logistics.
I know you had mentioned in the past that you're like, so I'm an event planner. I can take care of all this. Like, this is no big deal. I've got this. And that was a regret you would later have of like, I should have hired a day of coordinator to finish pulling everything together.
Yeah, absolutely. I, put all these details together. And as a professional meeting manager, I was like, oh, I can take care of it. But I forgot that I also had to be a bride that day and try to enjoy my wedding day and enjoy my new husband and my family.
Well, that was the exact reason I hired you the second I got engaged. It was, okay, we're engaged. Okay, I have my venue contract signed. Hello, Kristine. Are you available on my wedding day to be me so I can go be a bride? And you're like, yes, sold. And, the kind of the exact same reasons that you wish you would have had someone day of. You were amazing. And I knew that it was, I put all of my trust in you, which was such an easy thing to do. And just whatever happens, happens. And that's why I always push, if you're going to be doing something large, that you need someone there day of. So no one's asking you as the couple questions, or, being able to execute certain decisions on the couple's behalf, and just trusting that everything's going to be amazing. And you were so awesome that I ended up recommending you to several other friends. And this is how we got to reconnect again, because, as our listeners know, that early 2019, I start MG, the venue specialist, as a venue sourcing specialist. And the original idea was, I just want to find your venue and help you get over that huge hurdle. And then all the other details can fall into place. And I love being able to recommend vendors I love. And, for the larger, specifically weddings, especially, that when you need that coordination help, I'd love to have a team that I can recommend my couples to. And so called you immediately and I was like, I'm taking it to lunch. This is my business model. And then it was also at that point that you informed me, like, I'm not just a planner, but you would tell me about personal marketing solutions where you would design logos and business cards. So you actually designed my MG, the venue specialist logo, and did an amazing job. So I've got my Beyond the Venue mug here today, which we were able to take my MG, the venue specialist logo, and just basically just change the color and move the flower around. And I just love the font that we used, and the business cards look amazing. I can't wait to get back out there and start getting them out to people again. But it was just kind of great to reconnect in this capacity of, like, you were offering the exact services that I needed at that exact moment in time, that, just kind of helped me launch my business. And it's been great over these last couple of years, bouncing ideas off of one another. And I know you had even considered in the summer of 2019, were you thinking about doing something full-time on your own? Were you having some thoughts of, like, what, maybe it's time to switch gears?
Yeah, I wanted to take some more time to spend with my family. I had been traveling a lot with my day job, and I wanted to explore, what would my life would look like if I just did freelance projects, or small events. Not small, I mean, some weddings are very large, but like one-time events with just social couples. And so I kind of thought about it. I ended up taking a step back from work and working part-time at my current job. I've since gone back a little more part-time, but I decided that I couldn't put all of myself into it. I have 2 small kids, so that made it a little bit challenging. And the market at the time was very saturated. If anybody in hospitality knows that Philadelphia is a great town, we've got a lot of food and a lot of hospitality people. But people still need to celebrate. They still need to get together. And I always just like working on projects that interest me. So I had the opportunity, I guess 12 years ago now, to kind of start my own LLC, Personal Marketing Solutions, where my whole goal was to help small businesses and startups with these small marketing tasks that where you couldn't necessarily, fit it in your startup budget, that you're going to go work with a ad agency, just to make your stationery and your business cards just to get you started. So I had the opportunity to work with a couple people, organizations, and then I just kind of left it on the side for a while until the opportunities came up, and that's when we connected. And I was so happy to work with you and help you get launched in a little way, in my own little way that I helped. But
invaluable.
Yeah, even with organizing small weddings for people, and you don't necessarily have to be the meeting manager expert. You can lean on people that have that expertise and will bring those resources to you. Like you said, you created your own network of preferred providers that can help your clients achieve their goals.
The timing worked out perfectly because my very first clients, they were realizing what it meant to like they wanted a DIY wedding, but I think with so many couples, they don't realize truly what it means to do your own wedding and to put all these things together yourselves. And so when they saw the venue that I knew would be perfect for them, they fell in love with it, but they were hesitant to sign the contract because they were feeling very overwhelmed with how much work that they were going to have to do to bring their vision to life. And I was like, listen, y'all, I got you. Like, I'm going to introduce you to an amazing human that is going to take all your worries away, and she will handle all the details. And it's, this partnership of helping the couple get where they want to go, where they're, when they don't even know where to start. So I was so glad that worked out. And, we got to celebrate together before the world ended. And you and I, after the wedding, were able to get together for lunch. And the last time we saw each other in person was Friday, March 13th of 2020. And, we had lunch. I love that you call your daughter your office assistant. You're like, is it cool if my daughter, or if my office assistant joins us for lunch? I'm like, absolutely. She's a doll. So, got to catch up, kind of uncertain about, at the time we were uncertain what the next couple months were going to look like. Cause I know you were getting on a plane to go to Houston to work an event. And, I just remember talking to you after the fact of just what we just, the same way I went out for my birthday the next day, but was just, I remember being loaded up with hand sanitizer. And that was pretty much all I really knew what we could do at the time was.
Yeah. And I, on my trip, I even noticed like only a few people on the plane were wearing masks. That wasn't a thing yet.
We weren't wearing masks at the time.
Yeah. And it was a quick meeting. It was a one-day meeting that I had in Houston. And at the time, there was a lot of news in the media about the coronavirus. It was starting to spread. We were coming up to the peak of it. And then the meeting was over. I flew back that night, the 15th of March. And then the next day, everything shut down. So I've been home since, part-time with my kids. At some points, they were here full-time. My husband was working from home too. We were all here locked down. And I stayed with my company, and I work 4 days a week. So it's still a lot of work, and all of those meetings were moving into a virtual format or being postponed and canceled. So that was really interesting to watch and work with different people to figure out what was going to happen next. Because
how many events did you have scheduled for 2020? And was it a mixture of cancellations, postponements, and flipping to the virtual space? And also, I'm curious, how much do you travel? Like how, going to Houston for 2 days, like do you, in the before times, were you traveling a lot?
Yes. In the before times, I was traveling a lot. I don't know any meetings that are in the Philadelphia area. So I would get assigned to manage meetings all over the country. I was running one annual meeting that's held in the Caribbean. So I'm not sure how many were on the docket last year, because so many of them were either postponed or then canceled and then turned virtual. And so everything that I've been working up to now since lockdown happened has all been virtual. Several of them have been canceled. I was supposed to be going to Puerto Rico in June. That's not happening now. That'll happen, hopefully, fingers crossed, in February, which is the annual dates of that Caribbean meeting. And yeah, so I was traveling probably once every 4 to 6 weeks to different meetings, getting on planes and going wherever the meeting was. And now I work from home and help my team run these virtual projects.
I know you had mentioned that there, it's not just Zoom, that there's been a variety of different platforms that you've utilized. And what's probably been one of the most successful virtual events that you feel like you've either ran or experienced in recent times? Because I know I've done the webinars, and I haven't really done a virtual, what I would call event or conference or anything on a large scale. Yeah, it's all been kind of small. And I've had, even if it is a large event, getting put into a breakout room or something like that, but I don't think I've done anything that has not been on Zoom.
Right. So with Zoom's probably one of the leaders in these virtual meetings, and they leaps and bounds, hit the ground running when lockdown first happened, and were one of the ones out of the gate to make all of their updates and put in all their security patches to make it one of the most successful products. I think people are very used to using Zoom. But then you have all these other tech companies that came out. One of the big ones is called Cvent, which is an online registration system. Some organizations use it as their client management system, where they send emails and capture contact information. And there's other products. One that I use is called Visibo. And they all basically have some of the same features, where you can put in your attendees, you can communicate with them, people can register through the system. You can create a virtual exhibit hall in some cases, where if you get sponsors for your meeting or conference, they can have these online profiles and post videos. And they all have some nuances. Some are better than others. Some are very expensive. So if you're just an independent meeting manager, you can't necessarily buy these products out of the box because they cost tens of thousands of dollars in some case. Or there's a revenue share. Anybody, if I'm getting too into the weeds here, somebody buys a ticket and part of that ticket cost goes back to the registration company versus, the meeting the person that's hosting the meeting. And it's been interesting to learn all of these systems and to watch how many popped up in the first 6 months of the lockdown, and just see kind of which ones have stayed on until now. Since I have a designation, it's called the Certified Meeting Professional, and that requires you to do so many hours of continuing education every year. And I just like extra education. And I guess I'm a glutton for punishment, that I just like signing up for webinars and kind of seeing how other people run them and what products they're using.
Mm-hmm.
And for those that are at home, when you sign up for these things, whether it's entertainment, you're going on an online quizzo, or you've signed up for a conference that your company might require you to attend, it's all about the user experience and how easy it is for people to click around to engage with the conversation or the information, and then hopefully retain it and not just hit mute, turn your camera off, walk away, and just expect that you've checked in and you can check it off your list.
Right.
That's been one of the biggest challenges of this sort of virtual world that we're in, but an amazing way to stay connected with people, and as much as we can.
I tell you what, there have definitely been several webinars that I've signed up for because I'm like, this subject matter sounded so interesting and so intriguing, but it didn't capture my attention the way that the description did. And so instead of, it's kind of like you'll leave the screen up just in case you get like that one morsel of like, okay, all right, thank you for saying that works. And, being able to get other things done kind of in the interim, or clean up your inbox while this is happening. So it's, and Zoom fatigue is real. That I, have had the conversation with several people about, we're in such a weird space over the next couple months because the vaccine is rolling out. The weather is finally beautiful. So we're wanting to go outside, spend time outside, but also not necessarily ready to go to an in-person event. So it's going to be weird for the next couple months. Like, you're not going to necessarily want to be on your computer in the evening or on the weekends for events and conferences and what have you. But at the same time, you don't want to do it in person. And so
Right. In some places, I mean, we're taping this now. Can I say it's April 2021?
Yeah.
The regulations are going to change over the next couple of weeks. So right now in Philadelphia, you can't even get together. You can't have a wedding with more than 10 people or something.
You can. So indoor catered events are banned still in the city of Philadelphia while we're recording this. I'm hoping by the time this episode airs in mid-May that they're supposed to discuss at the end of April, what they're going to do about indoor events. But I know, like, I get the daily updates and the case counts just are not great for Philadelphia, but I think it's because there are a lot of people that are they were over it and shouldn't be. So,
right. Well, one of the online courses that I just took is called the Pandemic Compliance Advisor Certificate course, which is basically it was a 3-hour course to help meeting managers figure out how to run successful and safe in-person events for when that time comes. And it was very, very eye-opening. I'm so glad I did it. Learning, what the protocols are for taking temperatures and providing masks and keeping not only your attendees safe, but your staff, and translate that into a social setting. If you're planning your wedding, you are expecting 100 people, maybe you don't want to take temperatures, or you don't know that you have to take temperatures of people. Like, that's awkward. Like, hey, Uncle Joe, can I just zap your forehead real quick? I don't think the bride wants to do that. But if you brought in a professional to help you navigate those rules, if we have them at that time, that could definitely be a resource for some people to figure out, what are we supposed to do? How can we keep our friends and family safe, but still celebrate together?
And as was part of that session certification, enforcement or legalities, because I think that is a big question for us in the events and hospitality space moving forward is, how do you enforce this? What are you asking of people? There's talks of like vaccine passports and things like that. Like, it's what I guess, what did you learn in that? And like, what are you able to do? And then, kind of what are things going to look like for, the next couple months?
Sure. First of all, I'm not a lawyer, but but as a meeting manager, you do have a sort of duty of care to provide a safe environment for all of your attendees and your staff too. And, translate that into the social setting. You have a duty of care to provide that to your clients and to all the attendees of the event.
Checking your temperature. And I know that's something that we're all used to, going to different places where, you fill out the COVID waiver ahead of time. And it's my understanding that none of that is necessarily like legally binding, but I think it's more so that a business is doing its due diligence and trying to protect their staff and their other clients to make sure that like everyone is being as safe as humanly possible. And so while these waivers might not necessarily stand up in court per se, should someone decide to take legal action, it's more so like, okay, I promise that I didn't travel internationally within the last 14 days. So please provide this service for me, please and thank you. And I think it sounds like that's what's translating into the event space. And I know the ask this entire time, once they were starting to, when restrictions allow events to be held, that couples are responsible. So either whoever's running the event is in charge of providing a guest list for the purposes of contact tracing. So that way, if you have 300 people in an event, if someone does test positive for COVID, that you're able to at least have that list of 300 people and where they were in the 14 days prior. So you are able to do due diligence to figure out, who needs to be notified. And I think that's going to be the case for the foreseeable future.
Right.
I'd assume that's what you see in the event space on your end as well for the meetings.
In the corporate world, I definitely see that in some of the day meetings that I run. And, you know, we translate that to the social setting. I don't think a lot of couples are thinking in those terms. They're just thinking, I'm going to get together with my parents and my friends and family. But I think we're going to be seeing that, and it's going to be something that couples will have to look into, or bring in people to help inform them about what those rules are, so that they don't get fined and they don't become that story on the news that say, hey, look at
super spreader event.
Exactly.
It's
and it's going to change. It's going to change in the next couple of months. Hopefully it does go away soon. Although I won't be the person that says, well, we're beyond all of this, because I think some of it is going to stick around for a long time, unfortunately.
It's going to be a while, for sure. Well, I know it's limited to being able to go to venues right now, but and you've traveled all over the world. So what, Kristine, is your favorite venue? Or, you know, do you have a memory that, you know, was it the Love Note SEPTA train? Because I know nobody's favorite venue is going to be the Market Frankfurt line. I tell you what.
I'll tell you, when I ride SEPTA now, it actually makes me smile and I cry a little bit, because it was a really, really special experience. We were in the first car in the first vestibule, and we had a really great conductor, and the general manager of SEPTA at the time was there. So it was all very, very great. And definitely, you know, when you ride SEPTA, it doesn't look the way it did on my wedding day, but and a little side note for brides out there that want to wear a wedding dress, make sure that you pick a dress that's appropriate to where you're getting married. Because at the time I had already picked out a ball gown to wear on my wedding day that I had to keep bustled and basically like pinned to my body the whole time, because it's really hard to get a ball gown up the escalator at Second and Spring Garden to get on a train before they had that renovated. So that's one of my fondest memories of taking SEPTA. But in the grand history of events and meeting spaces, I have this funny habit of walking into a space and starting to count tables and chairs and trying to figure out how many people I can fit into a space. Now that's a little skewed, because it's
got to be super difficult. Your numbers are off now.
Numbers are now between people. But one of my favorite places of all time was a small restaurant in Boston, Massachusetts, called The No Name. And it was a family operated seafood restaurant that had been open for over 100 years. Unfortunately, it closed. I forget when, but it was, I think, pre-pandemic that it closed. And it was just a great place where you could get seafood that was literally caught that day, sold at the auction down the street, and then, you know, on your plate. My mom worked at a bank down there, which is actually no longer there because of urban development in Boston. But she knew all of the waiters, she knew all the managers there. It was the Greek family that owned it. And they just had the best seafood, and it was always a fun experience to go there. We were probably there once a week when I was a kid. So I ate a lot of seafood back then.
I love that. That's what a beautiful story. Well, I'm sorry they closed, but
it might be a case study someday for me to do my research in, because there was another restaurant just around the corner called Jimmy's Harborside, and it was basically a seafood steakhouse that was built in the 60s. And if you think like Mad Men style, like dining, this was the place. You had to get up to go to Jimmy's Harborside. They only had valet parking, but again, my mother knew all the managers and all the servers, so we always got a good table. It was the first time I had tried wine. But so that restaurant closed, the family sold it, and then it was actually renovated when that whole seaport area of Boston was revamped, and now it's got 3 restaurants on it, where the legal test kitchen is and all these other places, which is amazing. But it's sort of that old school steakhouse is, you know, never going to come back. But that was another one of my favorite places.
Well, nice. Well, Kristine, I would love for you to share with our listeners either how they can follow you or some of the different organizations you're involved in. How can our listeners check you out on the internet?
Oh, sure. So if you want to link in with me professionally, I would recommend finding me on linkedin.com. So that's Kristine Plourde Golden. I think my name will be up here somewhere. But if you're in the hospitality industry, I welcome you to join me at an MPI event. So it's Meeting Professionals International. Our Philadelphia area chapter is very, very active. I'll be on the incoming board of directors this July. So I'm really looking forward to working with them again. it's another way that I kind of keep learning how to do my job better, how to keep my finger on the pulse of the hospitality industry, and work with some really great people. And last but not least, if you're a Temple alum, please follow me and join the Temple Women's Network. We're going to be having some great events this fall, specifically for Temple Women alumni, so that we can hopefully reconnect with the university.
And I think I promised I would join the second you you brought it up. I was like, you got it. I count me in. Super proud to be an owl. Well, listeners, thank you so much for joining us today. My conversation with Kristine has been absolutely delightful. So thank you so much for joining us today. Follow Beyond the Venue podcast on Instagram, and also check us out on all of your favorite podcast streaming platforms. Have a great rest of your day.